If you're just tuning in, thank you for being here. We're on the verge of something powerful, something that began not in headlines, but in silence. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask something simple. If you're moved by what you hear, hit subscribe. Let's make this more than a moment. It can be a movement. Together, let's reach our first 100 subscribers. Your support means everything. In the heart of Washington, D.C., where power and tradition intertwine, a courtroom became the stage for an unexpected confrontation. It wasn't about legal arguments or political posturing. It was about something deeper. The question of who truly holds power in the judicial system. The setting? A Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, a routine event that no one expected to change the course of legal history. But then came Pam Bondi, once a political figure, now a force reshaping how we view precedent and accountability in the law. Pam Bondi stood before Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, not as an opponent, but as a challenger, one armed not with outrage, but with precision. She didn't shout, she didn't dramatize. Instead, she presented a forgotten case from 1979, Schaefer versus Montgomery County Board of Elections, and used it to expose a gap in a recent Supreme Court decision, Davis versus United States. This wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was a reckoning. For years, Schaefer had been buried, ignored, overlooked, conveniently erased. But Bondi resurrected it, not to win, but to remind the court of what it had forgotten. The room fell silent, not because of drama, but because of impact. Justice Jackson, known for her sharp intellect and composed demeanor, was caught off guard, not by emotion, but by logic. What Bondi did wasn't just challenge a ruling. She forced a moment of reflection in real time. And that silence, that pause, changed everything. In that instant, the narrative shifted from politics to principle, from spectacle to substance. What makes this moment so powerful isn't just the exchange itself, but what it reveals about the law, its tendency to forget. Legal systems are built on precedent, on memory, but not all memories are treated equally. Some cases become foundational, while others fade into obscurity, not because they were wrong, but because they were inconvenient. Bondi's move was more than strategic. It was philosophical. She reminded the court that precedent is not just about what is cited, but about what has been left behind. Newsroom scrambled. Legal analysts paused mid-sentence. The country watched as a former attorney general, once seen as a political pawn, became the architect of a legal reckoning. The footage of that moment would be replayed endlessly, not for sensationalism, but for significance. Because what happened in that courtroom wasn't just about voting rights or Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It was about power. Who wields it? Who questions it? And who dares to challenge the status quo without needing applause? Behind closed doors, the consequences began to unfold. In the Supreme Court archives, clerks pored over old rulings. Law students dug through footnotes. Across town, Bondi sat alone in a library, flipping through worn pages of Schaefer, knowing she had done more than make a point. She had reopened a conversation. Her exit from high-profile litigation hadn't meant retreat. It had meant reinvention. And now that reinvention was changing how the highest court in the land viewed its own past. The next round of questioning was not a battle, but a cross-examination carried out in public. Bondi dissected Justice Jackson's earlier writings, drawing lines between her past opinions and the reasoning used in Davis. The contradiction was clear, and for the first time, Jackson found herself in the position of defending not just a legal stance, but a shift in perspective. And yet she didn't retaliate. She listened, she considered, and in doing so, she proved that intellectual humility is not weakness. It is strength. Pam Bondi had spent years being underestimated. Once dismissed as a partisan fighter, she now revealed herself as a strategist, a woman who knew how to build a case not with sound bites, but with research, patience, and precision. She wasn't there to perform. She was there to remind the court and the nation that the law must remember its roots. And when it forgets, Someone must be brave enough to bring those roots back into the light. This wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of a movement. Legal scholars began referring to the Bondi Doctrine, a methodology of revisiting dormant precedents to test modern judicial claims. Courts started citing Schaefer again. The Department of Justice launched internal reviews. The idea that forgotten rulings could reshape current interpretations gained traction across ideological lines. And at the center of it all was a woman who had chosen to fight not with volume, but with clarity. Justice Jackson, once challenged in public, now sought dialogue in private. A rare invitation followed, a meeting behind closed doors not to debate, but to discuss. Two women, once on opposite sides of a legal battlefield, now sat together, not as adversaries, but as architects of a new understanding. And in that quiet space, something profound took place. Not resolution, but recognition. Pam Bondi never sought fame. She didn't want headlines. What she wanted was something far more difficult to achieve: honesty in the law. She understood that truth doesn't always come from the bench or the podium. It often comes from the margins, from the forgotten, from the overlooked. And sometimes it takes a single voice to remind an entire institution that justice is not just about decisions. It's about remembering why those decisions matter in the first place. So what does this story teach us? That power doesn't always reside in robes or titles. That truth can emerge from the most unexpected places. And that sometimes the most important moments in law aren't the ones shouted from the stands, but the ones whispered in the halls of justice, where memory meets meaning, and where one voice, speaking clearly, can change the course of history. If you've made it this far, thank you. If you feel moved, if you believe in truth, in justice, in the quiet courage of those who stand firm, even when the world looks away, please hit subscribe. Let's grow this community together. Let's reach 100 subscribers. Let's keep telling these stories. Because the loudest voices don't always shape history. Sometimes it's the ones that refuse to stay silent.